It is the Pete Sousa Show from the 21st floor here in the Alico building. So good to be back with you. So good. We are presented by Slovacics, of course, good friends of Crawford Austin Property, D1, Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers, and Socorro Family Ford. We're getting ready to hit the road soon to do some live shows, probably early December, I imagine. So very, very much looking forward to that. A lot going on this weekend in the world of college football, as it is now Wednesday, and with just 3 games left in the regular season in the Big 12, the chairs are still moving, right? The music is still playing, but when the music stops soon, there's only going to be a few seats that are available for teams that are able to make the Big 12 title game. And I am here to tell you, and it's not breaking news, this is from like the Tim Brando school of this stuff. As I roll my sleeves up, we're really ready to get into it here. There's one more round of chaos left. Like, guaranteed, there's one more round of chaos left. And if you look at college football, after the rankings were put out yesterday, there are some changes, especially when you look at what's going on with Miami and their loss. BYU actually moves up a little bit after a game where it was almost, it seemed likely for a moment that they might lose. But order somewhat was restored for BYU towards the end of that game against Utah. They were able to win, obviously. But now they're going to face a conflict towards the end of the season, and I'm going to tell you why. So they are taking on, and this is like maybe a little inside baseball, but a couple months ago, their schedule looked a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry. Their schedule down the stretch looked really good. They had an opportunity, right? It seemed to just like run the table clean. And this is not a knock on BYU and what's happened to them as a team. I think that they have showed some vulnerability over the course of the past few weeks, but I think that they've done what they need to do to kind of win these games, right? To find a way to somehow pull it out of the bag. They've done that. They did it against Oklahoma State, and they did it against Utah. But 3 weeks ago, I would have told you, okay, well, here's their schedule, last 3 games. Now, Saturday, they take on Kansas at home. Arizona State after that on the road, and then back at home against Houston. Now, this schedule, which look like a cakewalk into the Big 12 title game, you're playing a Kansas team that has won, I guess, 2 of its last 3 games, including an absolute ass-kicking of Iowa State at home. And what's more revealing is right now, this spread is at 3 points. The game is in Provo. Now, that's the 3 points. Sometimes Vegas will say, okay, well, you get 2.5, right, for being a road team. You get that 2.5 points. So you could almost say like it's like a pick 'em. And the reason why it's a pick 'em is because Kansas has been playing amazing football, running the football. They're the second best running team in the Big 12. They've got possibly one of the best running backs in the conference, maybe in the nation, in Devin Neal. The guy is putting the finishing touches on a historic career as a Jayhawk. And let's turn back the clock now. Before the season, everybody who thought they knew anything about college football had Kansas ranked in the top 20. They were picked to win the Big 12 in many circles. Now here we are. Then after that, they go to play on the road at Arizona State. Arizona State coming off a win against UCF. Arizona State has a huge game this weekend against Kansas State on the road. Final game, you go to play Houston. That game's at home. Houston right now has won 3 of their last 4. So it's like, and look, I know Utah plays great defense, but BYU showed us that they are more than just a little human last week. And with 3 games left to play, the margin for error is slim, but the chances of it are somewhat great. And this is not a knock on BYU, This is simply saying their schedule is going to be really tough down the stretch, way tougher than I had initially thought. So that's something right there to keep an eye on. Another thing that you've got to keep an eye on if you're following Big 12 football is Colorado. Now, Colorado has an opportunity this weekend against Utah. Again, they're back at home. Big noon kickoff will be there. It's like big noon kickoff, and this is great for the Big 12. Just continues to roll around, right, and go to different places in the Big 12. I think it's the third or fourth Big 12 school they've been at this year. But Colorado is certainly a team who they want to cover. I want to see if I can pull up the Buff schedule here. Okay, I got it. So Colorado's 7-2 right now. We take a look at the end of their schedule. They have Utah at home, who I think okay, that's a win. I'm going to say it. Last game of the season, they have Oklahoma State at home. I'm calling that a win. Now, in between that, they are at Kansas, which all of a sudden now the Jayhawks have become like this daunting opponent. And oh, by the way, the games that Kansas has lost this year, they've lost by an average of 5 points. And unfortunately for Lance Leipold and his team, they have lost, they have lost 6 games. So they're 3-6. So those 6 games that they've lost, that's kind of like a lot of games to lose, right? But if your average is 5 points over losing those 6 games, like there's a window into something going down there. And I just think Kansas is going to be a real pain in the ass for teams to play here down the stretch. And I think they end up on, I think Baylor has them. If I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong about that? Let me see. Yeah. So I think Kansas is ready to play spoiler and upset like a lot of teams and fans' expectations. And I think it starts this weekend with BYU. That's something to keep an eye on. Back to Colorado, one thing that's been I've had this in my craw a little bit. Deion Sanders is a superstar. There is a lot of sizzle and a lot of shine and a lot of excitement and a lot of money and a lot of attention that comes with Deion Sanders. You could say it's a bad thing. I personally look at it as a good thing, especially if you're Colorado. Hiring Deion Sanders has turned into a windfall financially, admissions-wise, right? It's like Colorado's harder to get into now than ever because everybody's applying. And football-wise, I mean, that's why you hired him, to win football games. The ancillary effects are undeniable. What's happening on the football field is now slowly but surely becoming undeniable as well. This is a team that's 7-2 that is in pole position to end up in the college football playoff. And the frustrating thing about Colorado and Deion Sanders, and this is just an issue that I have, is the court of public opinion looks at Deion Sanders as like an AAU football coach, right? Like a guy who is not necessarily stressing the right things, building the program the right way, teaching his team, how to behave. That is all, I'll say, bullshit. Okay, this is a team, when you watch watching Travis Hunter, watching Shadur Sanders, and those are just 2 guys who we talk about all the time, and why not? Travis Hunter is a generational talent. We had the opportunity to talk with Bruce Feldman today from Fox Sports on that Inside the 12 show that I do. And Bruce Feldman was talking about, like, it's impossible to compare Travis Hunter to anyone. There has not been a player within the last 100 years that has been this effective playing this many snaps. Charles Woodson at Michigan, yeah, sure. He played wide receiver, but he played some wide receiver. I think Gamble was a guy who he talked about. Kenny Gamble. Is it Kenny Gamble? It's not. I don't know if it's Kenny Gamble. I'm going to say Gamble to make sure. Now I got to look it up. Scotty, will you look that up? Gamble, football player, played both ways. Chris Gamble. So Chris Gamble, same deal. Played both ways. Obviously not generational. He's become forgettable, at least for me. But those guys are so special. We talk about them all the time because they are so special. Shedeur Sanders, you could say without Shedeur Sanders, Colorado would be in huge trouble. Like losing Shedeur Sanders would really, really just debilitate this team. Though when you really take a close look at Colorado and why they're not the team last year that was fighting for clicks, that was 3-0 and then went to Oregon and got the doors blown off and the entire season just went sideways. That was the second year or the first year of a rebuild. Coming off, taking over a program that had won one game the year before and was at an all-time low. I mean, you could maybe say it was a little darker when Bill McCartney took over or when he did take over and they were just there was something with the law used to come up like every 5 minutes, it seemed. But McCartney got the ship righted, won a national championship. But, that was a small window of great success. With Deion Sanders and whatever success Deion Sanders would have, it's not like it could be another small window. It's not like he's going to spend the rest of his life in Boulder. Be cool if he did for college football, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. But he's building a program. Nobody wants to acknowledge that for some reason. For some reason, nobody wants to talk about the fact that this is how you rebuild a college football team in today's environment of college football. Their defense, they've gotten much better up front, offensively and defensively, which is how you win football games. Last year, Shedeur Sanders, he was getting beat up so bad. I think maybe he was sacked more than any quarterback in the country, maybe one other. That's two reasons why. One, the guy's a dog and he doesn't leave the field. But two, the protection was awful. And guys couldn't get open either. And now you have a situation where this team is really starting to round out. And I don't think the praise is being distributed. Like, think about it. Just think about it. When people think about Deion Sanders, do they really think about him as a football coach? Scotty, I need you for this. Like, when you think about Deion Sanders, do you think about him as a football coach?
Only in the last 2.5 years.
But even now, and maybe you, like, I think people look at Deion even today as a celebrity. And not a football coach.
Well, I mean, he's Coach Prime. He's not even Deion, right? Like,
yeah.
He's got a brand. He's still selling the sunglasses. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's who he is. You know?
But there's a lot of guys throughout the country. Let's just say Joey Maguire.
Okay. All right. Yep.
He's a football coach.
100%.
And you might even think that if you were to put Joey Maguire and Deion Sanders against each other, or maybe even let's do another guy on our front lawn, Dave Aranda, who is like X's and O's guy, right?
He's
like
a computer.
You would say those two guys are probably better football coaches than Deion Sanders.
I wouldn't say that right now.
No, but
how many? Let me ask you this, Pete. How many in every sport great players try to make a jump into coaching and just fail?
Yes.
Horribly. Steve Nash is one of the most brilliant basketball players ever.
Yeah.
He might never coach again.
No, yeah. And look at what Deion did at Jackson State.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, really, you look at that, like, he built a winner. He's doing it again. This is not a microwave.
It's not a fluke.
Either. No, and it's certainly not like, you've had two amazing blue chip prospects. That's not his fault that he has a couple of winners like that who are two of the best players in the country. And if anything, that almost got them ahead of schedule last year. And so now, they he took a chance on the defensive coordinator, Robert Livingston. Mm-hmm. He had been a positional coach his whole career at Cincinnati. He hires Livingston. Livingston's doing very well. Pat Shurmur is doing a great job coaching the offense. I'm not saying that he's Vince Lombardi, right? Or that he's Nick Saban. But what I'm saying is the idea that he's a celebrity or a star, look, dude, he's doing something right football-wise.
Well,
and it's going to be here to stay for a while. I think that's my biggest point. This isn't going anywhere. As long as Deion Sanders wants to coach, there's going to be success. So you better buckle up.
There's two keys in any industry you work in that can make you very successful at anything. Who are your connections, right? And can you innovate and use current trends or technology to your benefit. And it pisses everyone off because Deion has just dove headfirst into transfer portal, headfirst into social media, headfirst into his celebrity, headfirst into his connections, because he's a well-connected guy as one of the great NFL players of all time. And it all works. And I think he just makes people mad because he told you it was going to work.
Yeah.
Right. He's always been so confident in himself and in all those things. And yeah, most traditional football coaches don't have all of those resources. You don't have those relationships. You don't have that social media savvy. You don't have that celebrity status, right?
Yeah.
He is using all of it to his advantage, and it's working.
Yeah. And dude, you bring up a great point with the nuanced innovation, right?
Yes.
That is, it's different. People do not like change.
Right.
And the college football world is changing. And Deion has, like every other very good coach, taken advantage of that, right? And that's why I said this is a modern day rebuild. There's a bit of it's been expedited by the portal and by NIL, and so like that's happening everywhere. But I really think that there is still a big time, overwhelming audience that does not want to tip their cap to Deion Sanders. I don't. And I think that they think it's a complete hoax, and I think they think that it's phony, and I think that they're learning that it's not.
We talked, I think, last week about the disrespect for the Big 12 in general and some of these AP playoff ranking things. The way Deion shuts people up, at least in a sane world, is go win a playoff game.
Yeah.
Like if he beats BYU and wins the Big 12, they're still going to be, BYU was fluky. They won all these close games. If Colorado rolls in and beats one of those 2-loss SEC teams that gets in, or whoever they face, shut up. The dude's a coach. Like he's winning good football games, right?
And I couldn't agree more. And I think the only thing that will stop him or block him from that kind of success is opportunity elsewhere, right? Like he's a different type of guy where he's not going to spend the next 30, 20 years at Colorado, 10 years at Colorado, building a dynasty or an incredible program the next Alabama. He might be coaching the Cowboys next year.
The Cowboys and Florida State are both going to call him. So he will have his options.
Yeah. I am fired up, Scotty.
Which by the way, if the Cowboys and Florida State call him, you know what that means? He's doing a pretty good job.
That's it, dude.
He's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Those two, Florida State and the Dallas Cowboys, are not calling dudes to come coach that can't. Well, Florida State a couple times, but they are not trying to call dudes that can't coach, right?
Yeah.
They're calling guys that can win.
Who was the guy that coached at Oregon that got the job at Florida State? Willie Fritz. Not Willie Fritz.
No.
Willie Fritz is
Willie. Sorry, I mixed up my. Yeah. That's the.
I'm doing this, and then we're going to take a break.
That's the Houston coach. Willie. I'm mad. I'm forgetting his name. Willie Taggart.
Yeah. Who, by the way, Taggart from Beverly Hills Cop died just a little while ago. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. We got some good news coming up with Cam Stewart on the other side of this short break here at the Rogue Media Network. There's so much other stuff I wanted to get to. I did the Baylor game last night on radio, which was like a whole nother animal for me. It was like, it was cool. That's how I did radio at the University of Richmond for the student radio station. I did radio for the NBA, what was then Development League, for several years, back, I guess, 11 years ago. And it's a whole different ball game. You have to be more descriptive. You have to be more apt at showing people or telling people, you can't show them, where the ball is on the floor, time and score, fouls, stuff they can't see this stuff. And that was a lot of fun. But there's also it's a pregame show, a postgame show. And the postgame show was a lot of fun, like we got to talk to Scott Drew, and then I got to talk to Jalen Celestine, and both of them were awesome. After the game, Coach Drew walked out of the locker room and walked right over to John Morris, who was the regular voice of the Baylor Bears on the radio, but John was doing TV. So Coach Drew got redirected to me, which I don't think he was crazy about, but he's a human being. And he and I worked together, and had a great conversation. And then Jalen Celestine came aboard, and, It was all good stuff. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, man. So much to talk to. Cam is going to take it from here with me, of course, and Scotty will get involved a little bit. But we do want to break down some of that Baylor basketball game. We talk a little bit more football. Looking forward to talking about the future of what Baylor's program could be. All of that coming up after this short break. The Pete Sousa Show, presented by Slovakics and powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports.